From the shifting shadows of imagination to the blinding light of terror, this is One Tale to Midnight.
The Walmart on Oakwood Boulevard hummed with holiday chaos. Shoppers crammed aisles, hunting for last-minute gifts, while employees in Santa hats forced smiles to get through their shifts. In the back corner of the store, Raymond Fields adjusted his fake beard, gazing at the laughing children gathered around him. His Santa Claus outfit was faded, the white trim tinged yellow. "Ho, ho! Ho, ho!" Raymond called, though his voice cracked under the weight of despair. The children cheered, their parents snapping photos with their phones. Behind the cheerful mask, Raymond's mind churned. He thought about the notice of eviction taped to his apartment door that morning, about the manager who had screamed at him in front of customers for being late, about his little girl lost to a custody battle years ago. Christmas spirit, he muttered bitterly. When the store manager, Greg Morrison, stormed over, Raymond tensed. "Ray, break time's over. We need you on Register 5. Something inside Raymond broke. He slowly rose, towering over the shorter man. "No," he said quietly. "What did you just say?" Greg asked. Raymond pulled a hunting knife from beneath his coat. "I said no." Before Greg could react, Raymond plunged the knife into his chest. Gasps echoed. Screams followed. "Attention, everyone!" Raymond shouted, blood dripping from his hands. "Santa's taking over Christmas!" Anita Carter crouched behind a display of discounted board games, holding her son Max close. "Stay quiet, baby," she whispered. The store's PA system crackled. "This is Santa Claus speaking," Raymond announced. "No one's leaving. Adults, you've ruined Christmas with your greed and selfishness. Only the children will be spared, because they still believe. The rest of you, well, we'll see." Anita's heart pounded. She scanned the aisles, spotting other terrified shoppers and employees frozen in fear. A teenager named Haley clutched her younger brother, Joey, near the toy section. An older man with a military haircut, who Anita guessed was a veteran, stood silently by the electronics display. "Mom, I'm scared," Max whispered. "I know, sweetheart," Anita said, forcing calm into her voice. "But I won't let anything happen to you. I promise." Raymond dragged 3 employees to the front of the store, forcing them to kneel. He held up his knife, its blade glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Let's play a game," he said with a twisted smile. "Confess your worst sin, or you won't see New Year's." One by one, the employees stammered out their confessions. A cashier admitted to stealing cash from the register. A stocker confessed to cheating on his girlfriend. When the third employee hesitated, Raymond tilted his head. "What's the matter? Too ashamed to speak?" I don't have any sins," the man stuttered. Raymond's grin vanished. "Liar!" Before anyone could react, he slashed the man's throat. Blood pooled on the linoleum. "Let this be a lesson," Raymond said, his voice calm. "Santa knows who's naughty and who's nice." Anita's instincts from her former career as a crisis negotiator kicked in. She needed to keep Raymond talking, to buy time. "Santa," she called, stepping out from her hiding place. "If you want people to listen, you need to tell them why you're doing this." Raymond's eyes locked onto her. "Why?" he echoed. "You want to know why?" "Yes," Anita said, keeping her tone steady. "You've got a reason, don't you?" Raymond hesitated, then began pacing. "They don't care about Christmas anymore," he muttered. "It's all about money, gifts, greed. They took my daughter from me, said I wasn't fit. All I ever wanted was to give her a real Christmas." His voice cracked. Anita nodded, inching closer. "You're right. A lot of people have forgotten what Christmas is about. But killing won't bring it back." "Won't it?" Raymond snapped, his eyes blazing. Maybe it's the only way to make them see. While Anita distracted Raymond, Haley quietly ushered the children toward the emergency exit. The veteran, whose name was Jack, whispered to Anita as he passed by. "I'll try to take him down." "Cover me." Anita's pulse raced. "Be careful." Raymond suddenly turned. "What are you whispering about?" he demanded. Jack lunged, tackling Raymond to the ground. The knife clattered away. For a moment, it seemed the nightmare was over, until Raymond pulled a hidden revolver from his coat. A gunshot rang out. Jack fell, clutching his shoulder. "You think you can stop Santa?" Raymond roared, grabbing the knife again. Anita acted on instinct. She grabbed a metal bat from the sporting goods aisle and charged at Raymond, swinging with all her strength. The blade missed her by inches as the bat connected with his arm, sending the knife flying. "Run!" Anita screamed at the remaining hostages. Raymond stumbled, but didn't fall. "You can't stop me," he growled. "I'm doing this for Christmas." "No," Anita said, standing her ground. "You're doing this for yourself." She swung again, this time hitting his head. Raymond collapsed, unconscious. Police stormed the store minutes later, escorting the survivors to safety. Raymond was taken into custody, muttering about his daughter and Christmas. Outside, snow began to fall. Anita held Max close, tears streaming down her face. "You were so brave, Mommy," Max whispered. Anita kissed his forehead. "We were brave together." As they walked away, Anita glanced back at the Walmart, its bright lights flickering against the darkness. The nightmare was over, but the scars it left would never fade.
Victor Ellis leaned back in his leather chair, savoring the view of the city skyline from his office. The window reflected the Christmas lights adorning the nearby buildings, their cheerful twinkle contrasting sharply with the dark satisfaction he felt. "This building will be worth twice as much once we clear out the riffraff," Victor said, swirling a glass of whiskey. Across the desk, his assistant nodded hesitantly. "The tenants, they're resisting the eviction notices. Some of them have lived there for decades. They're saying it's unfair, especially during the holidays." Victor smirked. "Fairness is for people who can afford it. Send the legal team. They'll fold like they always do." The assistant shifted uncomfortably but left without further argument. Victor leaned back, closing his eyes, already imagining the profits the luxury condos would bring. As the clock struck midnight, a faint sound drew his attention, a soft jingling, like sleigh bells. He turned toward the window, frowning. Far below on the street corner, a man in a Santa suit stood under the flickering light of a street lamp, staring up at him. The man's suit was filthy, the beard unkempt, and his hat sagged to one side. But it was the man's eyes, dark and piercing, that sent a chill down Victor's spine. Victor grabbed his phone and snapped a picture, but by the time he looked back, the man was gone. Victor's phone buzzed, dragging him from restless sleep. He squinted at the screen. The caller ID was blank, displaying only the words South Pole. "Hello?" he grumbled, voice thick with annoyance. A raspy voice answered, barely above a whisper. "I'm taking you to the South Pole." Victor sat up, heart pounding. "Who is this?" The line went dead. Shaking it off as a prank, he blocked the number and went back to sleep. But over the next few days, the phrase began following him. At a business lunch, a waiter dropped off his check and cheerfully said, "Hope you've been nice this year. South Pole's no joke." Victor froze. "What did you say?" The waiter looked confused. "Just, Merry Christmas, sir?" Victor dismissed it with a wave, but his unease grew. On the way home, a billboard for a children's toy store flashed a new slogan. "South Pole naughty? You'd better watch out." Victor's chest tightened. He turned off the radio, rolled up the windows, and told himself he was imagining things. The week before Christmas, Victor visited the building to personally deliver eviction notices. The tenants' glares followed him as he strode through the halls, ignoring the peeling paint and worn carpeting. "You can't do this," an elderly woman cried, clutching a worn Bible. "Where will we go?" "That's not my problem," Victor said, brushing past her. A young boy ran up, his wide eyes brimming with tears. "Santa's mad at you." Victor knelt, forcing a smile. "Santa doesn't get mad, kid." The boy shook his head. "He said he's taking you to the South Pole." Victor's blood ran cold. Before he could respond, the boy's mother pulled him away, glaring at Victor with contempt. That night, Victor worked late in his apartment, going through files. His phone buzzed again. "Caller ID, South Pole." He didn't answer. Minutes later, his building's intercom buzzed. When he answered, no one responded, only the faint jingling of bells. Victor closed his laptop and poured himself a drink, but even the whiskey couldn't drown out the growing sense of dread. At the gym, his usual trainer greeted him with an unsettling smile. "Better be nice, Mr. Ellis. Santa's always watching." On a crowded subway, a stranger leaned in and whispered, "South Pole's coming for you." Victor began skipping work, too paranoid to leave his apartment. Every knock at the door, every phone call, every ad jingle felt like a personal threat. His assistant's worried emails went unanswered. One night, Victor woke to the sound of heavy boots in his hallway. He grabbed a golf club and crept toward the door, but when he peeked through the peephole, the hallway was empty. He barely slept after that. By Christmas Eve, Victor was a wreck. His reflection in the mirror was gaunt, his suit wrinkled. He stumbled into a bar, desperate for human interaction, but no one seemed to notice him. "They can all go to hell," he muttered, downing another drink. The bartender, an older man with a gray beard, leaned in. "You should head home, son. Wouldn't want to be out when Santa comes to town." Victor slammed his glass on the counter. "I've had enough of this Santa crap." The bartender shrugged and walked away, humming a Christmas tune. Victor left the bar, the streets eerily quiet. Snow fell in thick flakes, muffling his footsteps. He felt watched but saw no one. Then at the end of the street, a figure emerged. The man in the Santa suit. Victor froze in his tracks, the snow crunching beneath his feet. The figure in the Santa suit stood still, illuminated by the dim orange glow of a street lamp. The dirty red fabric of his suit was streaked with grime, the beard matted and uneven. He tilted his head slightly, as if examining Victor. Victor's breath puffed out in panicked clouds as he glanced around. The streets were empty, no cars, no people, just him and the looming figure. "Get away from me!" Victor shouted, trying to project authority. Santa didn't move. Instead, he raised a gloved hand and pointed directly at Victor. "Naughty," he said, his voice deep and raspy. "Time to go to the South Pole." Victor turned and bolted. His dress shoes slipped on the icy sidewalk, but he caught himself, running blindly down the street. He ducked into an alley, pressing his back against the cold brick wall, his chest heaving. The sound of jingling bells echoed faintly in the distance. Victor fumbled for his phone, but his hands were shaking too much to dial. His breath came in short gasps as the jingling grew louder, accompanied by the crunch of heavy boots on snow. "No, no, no," he whispered. The sound stopped. Victor held his breath, straining to listen. When he peeked around the corner, the alley was empty. He exhaled shakily, relief washing over him. Then, from behind him, the voice came again. "South Pole awaits." Victor spun around, but no one was there. He stumbled out of the alley and back onto the street, desperate to find someone, anyone, to help him. Victor reached the edge of a small park, the snowy landscape glittering under the moonlight. He turned, scanning the empty streets, but there was no sign of the man in the Santa suit. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He grabbed it without thinking, nearly dropping it in his haste. The caller ID read, "South Pole." "No," Victor whispered, his voice cracking. "No." He threw the phone into the snow, but it buzzed again, the screen lighting up with the same ominous message. A deep laugh rumbled behind him. Victor whirled around to see Santa standing at the edge of the park, holding a large burlap sack over his shoulder. "You can't run from the naughty list," Santa said, his voice cold and menacing. Victor stumbled backward, slipping on the ice. "Please, I'll change. I'll give the tenants more time, I swear." Santa shook his head. Too late for promises. He swung the sack down onto the ground. From its opening, a foul stench wafted into the air. Victor gagged, trying not to look, but his eyes were drawn to the shapes within. Twisted, lifeless bodies tangled together. "Time to add one more," Santa said, stepping closer. Victor scrambled to his feet and ran, but Santa was faster. The jingle of bells grew deafening as the heavy sack swung inches from Victor's back. He tripped over a fallen branch, landing hard in the snow. Before he could move, Santa loomed over him, his gloved hands grabbing Victor by the collar. "No, stop!" Victor screamed, kicking and flailing, but Santa's grip was iron. With impossible strength, Santa dragged him across the park and into the darkness. Victor's screams echoed through the empty streets, growing fainter with each passing second until they were swallowed by silence. Victor awoke in a frozen wasteland. The sky was a perpetual twilight, with swirling snow obscuring everything beyond a few feet. He shivered violently, his expensive coat offering no protection against the biting cold. Santa stood before him, no longer jolly, but imposing and stern. Around them were other figures, people Victor recognized from the news. The corrupt CEO of a pharmaceutical company, a politician caught embezzling disaster relief funds. Each one stood shackled and trembling. "Welcome to the South Pole," Santa said, his voice echoing through the icy expanse, where the truly naughty pay their dues. One by one, Santa dragged the others into the blizzard. Their screams faded into the howling wind, leaving Victor alone. "Please," Victor begged, tears freezing on his face. "I can change. I'll make it right." Santa gazed at him for a long moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a coin. "Heads, you change. Tails, you freeze." He flipped the coin, letting it fall into the snow. Victor stared at it, heart pounding. The face of the coin bore a grim engraving. Judgment. It landed on tails. "No!" Victor screamed as Santa grabbed him, dragging him into the storm. The freezing wind bit into his skin, his vision fading as darkness consumed him. In the city, the tenants of Victor's building awoke to a miracle. The eviction notices were gone, replaced by a deed in their names. A note attached simply read, "From Santa." Far away, in the endless white expanse of the South Pole, a red suit fluttered in the wind beside a freshly carved ice grave. Santa adjusted his sack and walked into the storm, his job done for another year. The snow fell softly outside the quaint two-story home on Evergreen Lane. Inside, the Miller family was finishing their Christmas Eve traditions. "Okay, kiddos," said Emily Miller, brushing cookie crumbs off her apron. "Time for bed. Santa doesn't come unless you're asleep." "Santa's already on his way," shouted 6-year-old Mia, her eyes wide with excitement. Her 8-year-old brother, Ben, tried to act unimpressed. "Santa's not real," he said, though his voice wavered, just enough to betray his doubt. Their father, Tom, ruffled Ben's hair. "Real or not, he won't leave presents if you're awake to see him." As the kids trudged upstairs, Emily and Tom exchanged a smile. The house was warm and inviting, with the glow of the fireplace illuminating stockings hung with care. "I think this might be the perfect Christmas," Emily said, sinking into the couch. Tom sat beside her, pulling her into a hug. "We've earned it, after the year we've had." They clinked mugs of cocoa, unaware of the shadowy figures gathering just beyond their frosted windows. At exactly midnight, there was a knock at the front door. It wasn't a gentle tap, but a deliberate heavy knock that echoed through the house. Tom furrowed his brow. Who could that be at this hour? Emily tensed, her instincts immediately on edge. It's Christmas Eve. No one should be out in this weather. The knock came again, louder this time. Tom grabbed a fire poker from the hearth. "Stay here." As he approached the door, the glow from the porch light revealed a figure dressed as Santa Claus. The man waved cheerfully, his beard full and white, his suit immaculate. Can I help you?" Tom asked, his voice uneasy. "Ho, ho, ho!" the man bellowed. "I'm here to spread some Christmas cheer." Emily stood behind Tom, her hands trembling. "This isn't right," she whispered. Before Tom could respond, 3 more Santas emerged from the shadows, each grinning eerily. One held a large sack slung over his shoulder, another brandished a crowbar, and the third cracked his knuckles with a menacing smile. The first Santa lunged forward, slamming into Tom and sending him sprawling onto the floor. "Emily, get the kids!" Tom shouted, swinging the fire poker as the Santas poured into the house. Emily ran for the stairs, her heart pounding. Behind her, she heard the sound of furniture being overturned, and Tom's grunts as he tried to fend off the intruders. "Mia! Ben!" she called, bursting into their room. The children were already awake, their faces pale with fear. "What's happening? Mommy?" Mia asked, clutching her stuffed reindeer. "No time to explain. Come with me," Emily said, grabbing their hands and pulling them toward the attic ladder. Downstairs, Tom fought with everything he had. He managed to knock the crowbar-wielding Santa off his feet, but another swung a heavy sack at him, hitting him square in the ribs. "You've been naughty," one of the Santas sneered, pulling a long knife from his belt. Tom scrambled back, raising the fire poker defensively. "Stay away from my family," he shouted. The Santas laughed, their voices distorted and inhuman. Emily could hear the commotion as she helped the kids climb into the attic. She whispered urgently, "Stay quiet, no matter what happens. Do you understand?" Ben nodded, tears streaming down his face. Mia hugged her stuffed reindeer tighter, trembling. Emily closed the attic door just as heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs. The Santas seemed almost supernaturally strong. Tom was no match for their coordinated attacks. One managed to stab him in the side, and he fell to the floor, clutching the wound as blood seeped through his shirt. The leader of the group loomed over him. "Merry Christmas," he sneered, raising the knife for a killing blow. Suddenly the room grew icy cold. The fireplace roared to life, casting a blinding light. "What's this?" one of the Santas growled, shielding his eyes. From the flames emerged a figure, a tall man dressed in a rich crimson suit, his beard as white as freshly fallen snow. His eyes glowed with an ethereal light, and his voice boomed like a winter storm. "That's enough," said the real Santa Claus. The intruders froze as the glow from the fireplace intensified. The real Santa stepped forward, his polished boots crunching on shattered ornaments. The air was charged with an unnatural energy, making it hard to breathe. "You dare harm a family on Christmas Eve?" Santa bellowed, his voice like thunder. The leader of the fake Santas snarled, "This is our night now, old man. You're just a myth." He lunged forward with the knife, aiming for Santa's chest. Santa moved impossibly fast, catching the attacker's wrist mid-air. "You've been very, very naughty," Santa growled. With a flick of his hand, he sent the fake Santa flying across the room, crashing into the Christmas tree. The other three imposters hesitated, their bravado faltering. The room erupted into chaos as the remaining imposters attacked. The crowbar-wielding Santa swung wildly, only to have his weapon caught by Santa's gloved hand. With a mighty pull, Santa yanked the man forward and sent him sprawling with a single punch. Tom, still clutching his side, tried to stand. Santa turned to him, his expression softening. "Rest, Tom. I'll handle this." The third impostor attempted to grab the large sack he had carried in, but Santa snapped his fingers. The sack unraveled, revealing coal that spilled out in an unnatural wave, wrapping itself around the man's legs and pulling him to the ground. "You thought you could hijack Christmas?" Santa said, his voice heavy with authority. "You underestimated its power." The last fake Santa stood frozen, his hands trembling. "We didn't mean to—" Santa raised his hand, and a swirl of glittering snow whipped through the room, silencing him. "Christmas isn't yours to corrupt." The impostors were subdued, bound by enchanted garlands that seemed to glow with their own light. Santa turned to Tom, placing a hand over his wound. A warmth spread through Tom's body, and he gasped as the pain faded. "Thank you," Tom whispered. Santa nodded solemnly. "You fought bravely for your family. That's the true spirit of Christmas." Emily peeked from the top of the stairs, clutching a baseball bat she'd found in the attic. "Is it safe?" she called, her voice shaking. Santa smiled. "Come down. Your family is safe now." Ben and Mia appeared behind her, their wide eyes taking in the sight of the real Santa standing amid the chaos. "Santa!" Mia cried, running toward him. Santa knelt, opening his arms. "Mia, Ben, you've been very good this year. but even good children need to stay safe. Santa turned his attention back to the imposters. "There's still hope for you," he said, "but you must answer for what you've done." The leader of the group glared at him, but said nothing. The others avoided Santa's piercing gaze. "Christmas is about love, generosity, and light," Santa continued. "You tried to destroy that tonight, but it's never too late to change." With another snap of his fingers, the imposters disappeared, leaving only faint traces of coal dust behind. Tom stared at the empty space where they'd been. "Where did they go?" "To learn a lesson," Santa said cryptically. The chaos in the house seemed to vanish as quickly as it had begun. The tree stood upright, its ornaments restored. The fire burned warmly in the hearth, and the scent of pine and cinnamon filled the air. Santa straightened his coat and adjusted his belt. "You're a strong family, and you'll have a wonderful Christmas. Remember, the spirit of the season isn't in the gifts or decorations. It's in how we care for one another." He turned to leave, but Mia tugged at his coat. "Wait, don't you want cookies and milk?" Santa chuckled, his laugh deep and joyful. "I never say no to cookies, Mia." As the family gathered around him, the fear of the night melted away, replaced by warmth and gratitude. By morning, the events of the night felt like a strange dream. The children awoke to find their stockings overflowing, and a note left on the mantel. "To the Miller family, keep the spirit of Christmas alive in your hearts. The world needs more of it. Santa." Tom and Emily held each other tightly as they watched their kids tear into their presents, the joy on their faces a reminder of what they'd almost lost. Outside, the snow glistened under the morning sun, and though the world seemed ordinary once more, they knew the magic of Christmas would never leave their home.